In February of 1890, at an exhibition in Brussels, a Belgian painter named Anna Bach paid 400 francs for a canvas of figures stooping through a vineyard under a low orange sun. It was called the Red Vineyard, and it is the only sale of a painting to a collector that anyone has ever been able to document in Vincent van Gogh's lifetime. 5 months after that sale, the painter was dead at 37. 100 years later, in May of 1990, another of his canvases sold at Christie's in New York for $82.5 million. Adjusted for inflation, nobody has paid more for a Van Gogh at auction since. The story usually told about this is that the world failed to recognize a genius until it was too late. That's true as far as it goes. It's also the part everyone already knows. What happened in between is a story about 2 other people, one of whom died 6 months after Vincent did, and one of whom spent the next 34 years of her life making the world look at the paintings nobody wanted. He was born on the 30th of March, 1853, in Zundert, a village in the southern Netherlands, and given the name Vincent Willem. His parents had used it once before. A year earlier to the day, they had lost a son at birth, and that first Vincent was buried in the churchyard next to the parsonage, under a small stone with the family name cut into it. The second Vincent grew up walking past his own name on a grave. His father was a Protestant pastor with a modest living and 6 children. At 16, an uncle placed him with Goupil and Company, one of the most successful art dealerships in Europe. And for 7 years, Vincent sold other people's pictures in The Hague, then London, then Paris. He was very good at looking at paintings, and very bad at flattering the people who bought them. And in the spring of 1876, Goupil let him go. What followed was 4 years of failing at everything he tried. He taught at a boys' school in England without being paid. He clerked in a bookshop in Dordrecht and spent his hours there copying the Bible into 4 parallel columns of Dutch, French, German, and English. He went to Amsterdam to study theology and could not get through the Greek and the Latin. In 1878, he traveled to the Borinage, the coal district of southern Belgium, as a lay preacher, and he gave away his money and most of his clothes, slept on straw, went down into the pits, and nursed the injured after a mine accident. The committee that had sent him did not renew his appointment. The reason they put on paper was that he could not preach. So by the summer of 1880, he was 27 years old, unemployed, living on money from his younger brother, with no training and nothing sold. He wrote to Theo from the Borinage and told him he had decided to draw. He had 10 years left. The arrangement that made the work possible was simple, and it never changed. Theo, 4 years younger, had gone into the same trade Vincent was fired from and turned out to be better at it. By 24, he was running the Goupil branch on the Boulevard Montmartre. Every month, Theo sent money, and in return, Vincent sent canvases and letters. More than 600 of those letters survive, and they are dense, careful, unembarrassed things about color and Zola and exactly what he was trying to do. Theo sold almost none of the canvases. He kept sending the money anyway, for 10 years, out of a salary that was also paying for his own life. It was never enough, because Vincent spent it on paint. In July of 1883, from The Hague, he wrote to Theo about a man who had repaired his lamp 3 weeks earlier, came round for the money, found that Vincent did not have it, and threw him against the wall and then flat on the floor. In the same letter, he described the tax appraisers who had come to value his household. He showed them his 4 kitchen chairs and an unpainted table, and told them there was nothing there worth assessing. And when the final demands arrived, he lit his pipe with them. Elsewhere in the same letter, he asked Theo to consider taking legal ownership of every study in the studio, so that if the tax office ever did seize the contents of the house, the work itself would already be somewhere safe. He was worried about the wrong things being carried off, and he was right to worry. In those Dutch years, he painted weavers and diggers and peasants in browns and bitumen so heavy that the pictures have been sinking towards black ever since. In 1885, in Nieuwenan, he finished The Potato Eaters, 5 figures around a dish under a hanging lamp, their hands built like the tools they used all day. He thought it was the best thing he had made. Theo, who spent his working days surrounded by impressionists, wrote back about how dark it was. In February of 1886, Vincent turned up in Paris and moved in with his brother. And over the next 2 years, the browns came off his palette. He saw Monet and Pissarro and Seurat. He met Gauguin and Toulouse-Lautrec. He bought hundreds of Japanese woodblock prints and hung them around the apartment and copied them. And the color in his work went up, like a light being switched on. He also drank heavily, argued constantly, and made his brother's flat unlivable. In February of 1888, he took a train south to Arles in Provence, mostly to get out of Theo's way. Arles is where the work everyone knows comes from. In roughly 15 months, he produced more than 200 paintings. He rented 4 rooms in a building on the Place Lamartine, 15 francs a month, yellow outside and whitewashed within, and started writing to Theo about a studio in the south where painters could work together and share the costs. He painted the sunflowers for the walls of the room he was preparing for Gauguin. In October of 1888, with Gauguin newly arrived and the money as tight as ever, he wrote Theo a letter that puts it plainly. "I can do nothing about it if my paintings don't sell," he wrote. "The day will come, though, when people will see that they're worth more than the cost of the paint and my subsistence, very meager in fact, that we put into them." In the same letter, he did the arithmetic out loud. A man who lives 50 years and spends 2,000 francs a year spends 100,000 francs, and so he has to bring 100,000 in. To make 1,000 paintings at 100 francs each across one working life, he wrote, is very, very, very hard. Gauguin lasted 9 weeks. They painted side by side. They fought about everything. And on the 23rd of December, after a final argument, Vincent cut off part of his own left ear, and Gauguin was gone within days. By the end of February, 30 of his neighbors had signed a petition asking the mayor to have him locked up. On the 8th of May, 1889, Vincent committed himself, voluntarily, to the asylum at St. Paul de Moselle, outside Saint-Remy. He stayed a year and a week. The attacks came and went without warning and left him unable to work for weeks at a time. And in the gaps, he painted about 150 canvases, including the cypresses, the olive groves, the wheat fields with the reaper. And in June of 1889, from the window of his room and from memory, the starry night. Then, over about 5 weeks, 3 things happened. In January of 1890, the critic Albert Aurier published a long article about him in the Mercure de France. a magazine read by more or less everyone in France who cared about new painting. It was the first serious critical writing about his work in his lifetime, and Vincent wrote to thank him for it. On the 31st of January in Paris, Theo and his wife had a son and named him Vincent Willem after his uncle. And in February, at the exhibition of Les Vins in Brussels, Anna Bach bought the red vineyard for 400 francs. Theo wrote to tell him on the 18th. So the last winter of his life is the one where he had a critic, a collector, a nephew with his name, and paintings going out to exhibitions in Brussels and Paris. The famous line needs a caveat. The red vineyard is the only documented sale of a painting to a collector, but he traded canvases for meals and materials for years, and there were almost certainly a handful of other transactions nobody bothered to write down. The truthful version is smaller and worse. He never once made a living from painting, and he never found out that he would. He left the asylum in May of 1890 and traveled north to Auvers-sur-Oise, a village on the river about 20 miles from Paris, where Theo had arranged for him to be near a doctor called Paul Gachet. Gachet was a homeopath with a print collection and a taste for the company of painters, and Vincent's first assessment of him was that he was sicker than his patient. He took a room above a cafe, the Auberge-sur-Oise, for 3 francs 50 a day. He had 70 days there, and he painted about 75 canvases in them. The church at Auvers, the town hall on Bastille Day, wheat fields under low, moving skies, Gachet in a yellow-lit interior with his head on his hand. On the 27th of July, he worked on a picture of tangled tree roots cut into a hillside, and in 2020, a researcher matched those roots to a spot on a road 150 meters from the inn. He left it unfinished, and it is now widely taken to be the last thing he painted. That evening, he walked back into the Auberge-sur-Oise with a bullet in his chest, went upstairs, and the innkeeper found him curled up in bed. 2 doctors examined the wound, Gachet among them, and agreed the bullet could not be taken out. There was nothing to do. At Vincent's request, Gachet filled a pipe, lit it, and put it in his mouth. Theo arrived from Paris the next day and stayed at the bedside. He wrote afterwards that his brother told him he wished he could go like this. Vincent died at 1:30 in the morning on the 29th of July, 1890, aged 37, in a rented room above a cafe, with his brother in the chair beside him. Researchers have argued since 2011 that someone else fired the shot and that he covered for them, but most Van Gogh scholars still hold the account he gave himself. What is not in dispute is what he told the gendarmes the next morning. "Do not accuse anybody. It is I that wished to commit suicide." He was buried in the cemetery at Auvers on the 30th of July. In September of 1890, Theo hung a memorial exhibition of his brother's work in his own apartment on the Cité Pigalle in Paris. He was already unwell, and within months he suffered a complete collapse, was committed to a clinic in Utrecht, and died there on the 25th of January, 1891, 6 months after Vincent, at the age of 33. The cause was recorded as dementia paralytica, brought on, according to the certificate, by heredity, chronic disease, overwork, and sadness. That left Johanna van Gogh-Bonger. Jo was 28, widowed after less than 2 years of marriage, with a 1-year-old son and several hundred unsold paintings by a dead man almost nobody had heard of. The advice she got was to let the pictures go. Most of the family had decided years earlier that the whole business had been a long and expensive embarrassment. She moved back to the Netherlands, opened a boarding house in Bussum, hung Vincent's canvases on the walls of the room where her lodgers ate, and started writing letters. For the next 3 decades, she ran what amounted to a one-woman campaign. She lent work to any exhibition that would take it, in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Paris, Berlin. She sold carefully, a few pictures at a time, and she refused to sell the ones she judged most important. In 1905, she organized a retrospective at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, with more than 400 works in it, and it is still the largest Van Gogh exhibition ever mounted. And she sat down with the letters. There were hundreds of them, in Dutch and French, in her dead husband's papers, and she transcribed, dated, ordered, and annotated the whole correspondence. It took her more than 20 years. She published Vincent's letters to Theo in 1914, and that is the year the world got the voice as well as the pictures. In the same year, she had Theo's body brought from Utrecht and reburied at Auvers in the plot beside his brother. Jo died in September of 1925, aged 62. 18 months before that, she let go one of her favorites, a canvas of sunflowers she had looked at every day for 30 years, to the National Gallery in London, partly because she thought having it on a London wall would finally get her an English publisher for the letters. The rest of the collection passed to her son, the engineer Vincent van Gogh, who transferred it to a national foundation in 1962. The Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam opened on the 2nd of June, 1973, with more than 200 of the paintings in it, and it now takes in close to 2 million visitors a year. On the 15th of May, 1990, the portrait of Dr. Gachet, painted in Auvers that June, weeks before he died, sold at Christie's in New York for $82.5 million to a Japanese paper manufacturer named Ryoei Saito. Saito said he wanted it cremated with him. It wasn't, as far as anyone knows. It also hasn't been seen in public since, and nobody outside a very small circle knows where it is. 10 years of work, something like 860 paintings, more than 1,000 drawings, 400 francs. He told Theo the day would come when people would see they were worth more than the cost of the paint. He was right about that. He and Theo were the only ones who did not live to see it.